This is the DarkFall Spells Breakdown plus Bindings video. So we're going to go over all of the spells that you're going to need towards the end of the game, PvP, PvE, and which spells to use. And we're also going to go over my personal bindings, but we'll show you a couple of binding settings that are going to help you out regardless of whichever binding you use. Now, I've put together a Google Sheet for you guys, and I'll have this in the description below and also in the Rise of Agon Discord as well. So let's check that out first. So here on this Google Sheet, it's going to give you all of the spells and their categories, air magic, arcane magic, etc. So it's going to give the descriptions, obviously the icons, the mana cost and stamina cost, and also the reagent cost. So this sheet will basically tell you everything you need to know spell-wise, at least all the available spells, right? So we're not necessarily going to be using all of these spells and skills, but this is going to give you the index right here at the bottom. Now, you're going to be able to go in here and search around and see what's available. And then if you come down here at the bottom, there's all important spells. Now, these are going to be all the total spells for the most part that you're going to use. Now, these categories, you're not going to use every single spell in each of these categories, right? And we'll go over that a little bit later. But just keep in mind, here are all the spells that you might want to use or that you will use. Now, here's going to be the utility spells section. These are going to be all the non-damage spells or spells that have a utility factor to them, and it's all categorized as well. So you can look at that. And then we got the damage spells. You got your bolts, your rays, your R50s, your R90s, your AOEs. We're going to talk about all those. And then you also have your damage spell picker. So what you're going to do here is you're going to be able to check these boxes, and it's basically going to uncheck and hide any of these spells here. And we're going to walk through this, but basically you're going to want to pick one bolt. You're probably going to use most of these rays, and you're probably going to pick 1 to 2 R50s, 1 to 2 R90s, and 1 to 2 AOEs of your choice. And you'll be able to choose any of these, and you'll also be able to select and unselect these rows with the row button here. Now, we also have one last section, the debuffs as well. They've been a little bit nerfed, but you can still use debuffs. It's preference. We've got sections here for you as well that you can pick from, and you just have a nice glance at all the debuffs with their reagent cost and what they do, all right here for you. So this is going to be shared with you in the description and in the Roa Discord and possibly on the wiki once I can figure out how we can put it up on the wiki, or if we can. So now we're going to go back to the game. And the first thing I want to start off with is the weapon bar. Now, we've gone over the weapon bar before in one of my previous videos, the Ultimate New Player Guide, but I want to go quickly over the weapon bar again, and we'll breeze kind of through this. So basically, you're going to open up your paper doll, which is P. So you open up your paper doll, and you're basically going to take any weapon of your choice. I would recommend at least one two-hander. So whatever two-hander you want to use, throw it in this first one or whichever one. You're going to click the gear, and then you're going to want to bind this to whatever you want. I have it as mouse wheel down. You're going to want to click enable auto equip, and that's going to automatically equip the best two-hander. Now, what you need to have here at the first row is only these weapon types, right? It needs to know that you want a sword, right? And this is the order, so you can mix these around. You can, if you pull one of these off, then you can add it back by right-clicking in this box, and you can add knives back. You can adjust this order, and it's going to go from left to right on the order, and then you've got highest damage, and you've got other filters here. You can do by speed. You can rotate these like this, but make sure only these weapon types is at the top, and it's the weapon you want to be selected, like the two-handed sword. And there's some presets here. Not a big deal. You also have trigger hotbar slot. That'll trigger one of these hotbar slots. I personally don't use this, but if you want to do that, you can. And then there'll be some more options here if you do this, the column and row, things like that. You can do the columns here, just have it switch a hotbar column. Anyways, that's it for the two-handed. Now we're gonna go to the staff, and we're basically gonna do the exact same thing. I've got it set to mouse wheel up, and obviously you want enable auto equip, and a little bit here you're gonna want to either have highest speed or highest damage first. Now you gotta be sure you've got a staff here at the top, only these weapon types, which is the staff. And I personally want speed on my main staff, and that's going to be for damage, utility. It's pretty much going to be for everything other than buffs and maybe rays, right? You might want your rays on a different staff potentially, but for now, this is going to be good for me. And that's it for the staffs. Now you go on to bow. Exact same thing. Realistically, it depends what you want to do here. You can do highest damage, you can do high speed. I just have it on the default. I've got it to bind it to left shift mouse wheel up, and then we'll go on to the sorting board and enable auto equip. And you want to be sure you got your sorting board here as your weapon type. Highest damage is fine. The main thing here on the sorting board, you want to be sure you have auto parry on, right? This is going to allow you to automatically block. So instead of having a button for sorting board, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to want to, whatever button you want as parry, you're going to set that to this binding here, right? Your sorting board, enable auto equip. This weapon bar slot you want to be your parry button. So when you click this, it's going to parry, and it's going to auto equip the sorting board and automatically start parrying. So you're going to click and hold whatever your parry button is. Got to be sure you have auto parry checked, and that's good for that. And I'll show you a quick example of that. Basically, let's say I've got my sword out, and then for me, the button is mouse wheel click in. And then I'm holding it right now, and it's parrying. And it just automatically swapped, and we're parrying. Quick and easy, very fast. You definitely want to have this. Now we'll go back and see what else we need. So for me personally, I want knives on my bar as well. So I've got a knives weapon bar slot. I'm going to click the gear and obviously enable auto equip. Sometimes your knives might break, and you might be like me, you'll just continue to press your knife button because you want your knives out when you're PvEing. And it's sometimes nice to have your two-hander here if you're just muscle memory kicks in and you just can't help but to pull out your knives even though they're broken. So I have my binding to left alt mouse wheel down, and this is going to be the priority here. And that's it for this one, highest damage. That's on my knives. And then we've got, this would be like your buff staff or maybe a ray staff, right? So this is going to be a, let me see if I can see it here. So this is going to be like a higher damage but slower cast speed type staff. And there's specific staffs for that. We won't get into that. But basically you might want this, and I've got mine currently on left alt mouse wheel up. So that's basically going to be your buff staff, your ray staff, and whatnot. So that's going to be it for the weapon bar. So the first spells I want to talk about are the conversions. So you've got 3 conversions. You have stamina to health, you have health to mana, and mana to stamina. Now these are super important bindings. You're going to want to have these on very easily accessible bindings, and we're going to go through some options. So you put them on your bar and you right click the gear, and there's a couple options I want here. So we've got autocast. I recommend conversions on autocast. There's really no reason not to. If you're going to press the button, you want it to just go so it can quickly convert and you can get back to whatever you need to do. Now, another thing you could do, and I have personally been experimenting with, and I do like it, so keep in mind that you don't necessarily want to have melee buttons, skills on your conversions if you do this potentially, as it might interact in a way you don't want to. But essentially what this does is trigger weapon bar slot is going to trigger one of your weapon bar slots, right? So that's these. And right now I have this selected, and you also want to pick the slot. So I want it to be the staff, right? So I've got my staff. This is 1 through 6. So I want it to be this staff, right? And you want to do force weapon switch, because that's going to automatically pick the best weapon like your weapon bar slot does in general. So let's say there's a black bolt here. Well, it's also going to, and maybe you have a cobra staff. It's going to replace your black bolts or your cobra staff when you trigger this conversion, right? Mana to stamina. So you want to click this, and then what this is going to do, for an example, is let's say I have my melee weapon out, and I want to cast mana to stamina, right? So I'm going to click my mana to stamina binding, and it's going to automatically switch to my staff, and it's automatically going to cast because we got autocast on and we have the trigger weapon bar slot on. So it's going to immediately, with one button press, switch to my staff and do the conversion. So that's pretty cool. Now, you're going to want to do this with your 3 conversions. You don't have to do trigger weapon bar slot, but it does seem to be really, really good. Now, if you maybe have like a melee skill here, you might not want to do this, or you might want to move your melee skill to a different button. So currently I've got my mana to stamina. I have it on my button 4. This is a mouse button, and it's one of my side mouse buttons. I've got 2, and it's going to be on the top end mouse side button, and that's going to be mana to stamina. And now we've got stamina to health. So we're going to do the exact same thing, right? We're going to do autocast, trigger weapon bar slot, and force the weapon switch. And I've got my staff selected. And this is going to be my black bolt. This is going to be my main staff. You want a fast casting staff for pretty much almost all of your spells. So keep that in mind. Now this is pretty much the same thing. I've got it binded to my other mouse button, which is on the side. It's going to be just the bottom one, a little bit easier and closer to my thumb. So that one's really convenient and easy for me to press. And then we're going to do this exact same thing here with health to mana. So health to mana, autocast, trigger weapon bar slot, same thing. And this one's going to be shift mouse button 4. So it's going to be the same button that mana to stamina was, but just shift that button. Autocast, same deal, and that's my health to mana. And you're going to want that on a very easy button to press. All of these conversions you're going to use a lot. You're going to want them on very easy pressable buttons, right? So that's it for the conversions. Now we want to do the same thing with heals, right? So heals we want on autocast. And we also do and want them on trigger weapon bar slot. Now, you don't have to do this for heals or conversions, but I'd recommend doing it, especially if you don't have any conflicting melee skills on heals, right? And if you do, you might want to consider moving those melee skills to other buttons. But either way, this saves you a tiny bit of time, but it could be all the difference in a fight. So go ahead and do exactly what we did with the conversions. My heals are on left shift, mouse button 3, which was my bottom side mouse button that had my stamina to health. So I've got all my heals pretty much on this same mouse button, just one with clicking it and one with shift and then clicking it. So mouse button 3. Now, we also have one more heal I want to talk about, but it's actually a melee skill, right? So let's go ahead and bring that up just to show you. It's actually kind of in an odd spot. You want to go to skills, weapon skills, melee power, and here's rage, right? So what rage is, you got to have a melee weapon out, and you select the ability, and you left click. It's going to take a bunch of mana away, but you're going to get health over time, and you're going to get a bunch of resistances. And it's got this buff here. You can see you gain elemental and stuff resistances for 40-ish seconds. So that's another one you're going to want to have on a button. All right, so there's some more heals I want to talk about, and these are healing other spells. And there's a couple others as well, so let's talk about them. So first off, we've got Sacrifice. This is a spell chanting spell, and what it does is it takes a tiny bit of health from you, and it gives whoever you're aimed at quite a bit of health. So right now, currently, I have Sacrifice on caps lock, and for the most part, you don't want to like auto cast or anything like that. It's just a regular spell that you just want to have on just a normal binding, and you want to have it on a fairly convenient binding, especially for group fights. And this is just to heal other people. And you've also got another one of those spells called Heal Other. So you got Heal Other here, right? Same exact thing. It doesn't take health, but obviously it is going to take some mana. But both are good. And you do have one more. It's called Lay on Hands. So it's a lesser magic spell, but does the same thing. So you've got 3 of those. You want to at least have 2 on your bar. You can just do them as cycle, or you can have different buttons, but cycle is probably the easiest. And I'll show you that now. So I've got it on caps lock. You can have it on whichever binding. All these bindings you can have on whatever. I've got first available. You can have it on cycle. You can honestly just use 2 and take 1 off the bar and just go with that as well. You do have technically time to cast all 3. There's like a slight delay between the second and third one, or the second and going back to the first one. So technically having 3 is like the most ideal, but most of the time you're not going to just be healing other all the time over and over as quick as possible. So keep that in mind. You got heal mount, it just heals your mount. Pretty self-explanatory. And then you also have one that's pretty unique. It's not very good. There might be some very niche situations where it could be okay, but it's called Healing Chant. And basically you cast it, and you have to continue to hold Healing Chant, and you're stuck in place. Like I can't move, and it does like a heal around me over time, and obviously you can see it's draining my stamina and my mana. So I'm using a lot of resources doing this, and I'm completely stuck in place. So I'm pretty much dead in the water if anybody attacks me. So you don't really need to have this binded or anything like that, but maybe you could come up with some group fight situations where maybe you could use it, but I would just ignore it, not even have it binded. But it is there for you to know about. And that's going to be it for all the healing spells. Okay, so I want to talk about the damage spells. Now, I've broken the damage spells into 5 categories. So we're going to go to the spreadsheet really quick. And basically, I've got this spreadsheet down below for you in the video description, and it'll also be in the Discord. Now, I've got this spreadsheet here, and you're going to be able to check these boxes. And this will select and unselect the different bolts. And you're going to want to pick one of these bolts. It doesn't matter which one, they're all good, they're all useful. Just pick one and stick with that and level that up. Now, if we go back to the game, essentially the way I've got my bolts set up is I've got them all stacked on Q, right? So I'm doing this just for leveling up purposes. Now, I've got them binded on Q here, just have it on cycle, and I also have mount lean left as well. So you can also assign that and couple that with Q as well. It won't conflict. And you also have Disabling Blow, Greatsword, Disabling Blow, knives, and whatever other weapons. And then Disabling Shot as well is on here. And these melee skills will be able to stack onto a spell slot like this, and they won't conflict with each other. So feel free to do that with all your melee skills. That way you save up on a little bit of bindings, and these won't conflict. And so I've got them all stacked like this because I've been leveling up magics, and you're going to probably have this similar setup while leveling. And then after you're done leveling your magics, honestly, you can just remove these bolts. You could keep maybe 1 or 2 in case you run out of, maybe 2 or 3 in case you run out of reagents for your main bolts. But for the most part, once you're done leveling up your magic schools, you just pick one of these. It can be whichever one you want, whichever one you like, and just level that. And that'll be your bolt. And you're going to want to have your bolt on a binding. So keep that in mind. And then the next category of spells I want to talk about, the damage spells, is Raise. We're going to go back to the sheet, and we've got Raise here. Now, for the most part, you're going to probably want to have all of your Raise all stacked onto one binding. But this way you could maybe pick and choose which one you might want first or last, or maybe you might only want to have like 4 or something like that potentially, or whatever you want to do. Right, so I've got the Raise category here for you. And just on this sheet as well, you can select all and unselect all with these row of buttons down here. So, and you can also uncheck a few here or there, so that way you can get your exact setup that you want going on. Now we're going to go back to the game, and I'm going to show you my Raise setup. So currently what I've got is I've got all my Raise stacked here in one massive stack. Now I want to go to the gear, and currently I've got it on right click, so mouse right click, and I actually have it on first available. So that means it's going to go from left to right, and it's going to pick Dragon's Breath. If Dragon's Breath is up, it will use that, and if not, it'll go down the line. Now I've got it on autocast, and Raise are pretty nice for autocast. You don't have to do this, but I'd recommend it. If maybe it's on your mouse. Now, if you have it on like the keyboard buttons, you might not have that kind of muscle memory with shooting from like a keyboard, essentially. So you might not want to have it on autocast if you have it on your keyboard. But I like it on mouse right click. It's been really nice for me. You could try it out. If not, doesn't really matter. Bindings are all preference anyways, but I just wanted to show you and share with you guys how I have my binding set up. Now I do have Whirlwind on here as well, which works out nicely too. And for autocast, you pull out your weapon and then you can right click and then you're whirlwinding. So that's pretty cool as well. All right, so another feature with the Raise and buffs especially. So let's go ahead and right click our Raise and go to the gear. So we've talked about the trigger weapon bar slot. Now we have basically a higher damage but slower cast speed staff on our 6th slot right here. And so we're going to trigger that slot with our Raise, right? And we're going to force the weapon switch, okay? And we do want it on autocast. If you have your Raise on autocast, you don't have to do that, but I've got my Raise on right click. Whenever I've got my staff out and I right click, then it's automatically going to pull out my higher damage staff, and it's going to ray. So, and then whenever you go back to whatever, spells, then it's not going to automatically switch back. But if you let's say you convert or something like that, because our conversion switched to our faster cast staff, then it'll swap back to your faster cast staff. And what you could do is you could go through and on all of your spells that you want to be fast, you could make it trigger your fast cast staff, so like all your damage spells. But what you might want to do if you do switch your Raise and your buffs to your higher damage, more power essentially, but slower cast staff, just keep in mind you might have to change the rest of your spells on every single one to now trigger your second weapon bar slot, like so. Okay, so keep that in mind. Otherwise, you're gonna cast a ray, and then you're gonna be casting other spells, right? And let's say you don't have one binded, like maybe 2, and then now I'm casting with a very slow staff. So keep that in mind, and you might have to go through and change all of them, or you can just have a button to swap to your ray staff. Or what you could do too is you can just press your staff key again, and then you've got your faster cast staff out. So however you want to do that is perfectly fine. Just keep in mind it is pretty convenient to have your ray staff just automatically come out when you cast a ray. So that's a nice little option for you. So the next damage category I want to talk about is rank 50s. Now, we're going to go to the spreadsheet, and you got your rank 50s here. So pretty much every spell school has a rank 50. It's basically like a larger bolt, but it will typically have a little bit of a knock-up, you know, a little bit bigger AOE, things like that. Now you get to just pick and choose what you want. There's also going to be rend and needles, which destroyers should be able to use. Because rend is greater, needles is witchcraft. So you might want to keep that in mind if you're ever a destroyer. You can use these, and they do a bit of bleed, right? Needles does, and rend does as well. So you can use those spells as a destroyer, and those are available to you. So keep that in mind. But you're going to want to pick one of these, and you're also probably going to want to pick Fireball, right? Fireball just has a really good knock-up, and it's just consistent, right? You know, that knock-up is going to lead to maybe a ray, things like that. Lightning Strike, I believe, still does have a little bit of a knock-up as well, unless they've changed it. But Lightning Strike, a little bit less knock-up than Fireball, but still pretty good. And you can use any of these you want. I would suggest 1 to 2. Obviously Fireball, and then maybe another one. And if we go back into the game here, I've got Fireball and E. So Fireball is very important spell, one of your main spells really, and it's very spammable. It's got a very short cooldown. So I've just got it on cycle, doesn't really matter. I've got it binded to E, and also have, well, I have Whirlwind here, but this is what I used to have Whirlwind on. I don't really need this on here anymore. So there we go. And that's it for Fireball. And also I have Mount Lean Right on E, so Q and E is my leans. You want to keep that in mind as well. And then I also have left shift Q. Now I have 2 right now. I'm probably going to use Lightning Strike, but I've been trying out shards and leveling shards a little bit, and that's pretty cool too. And I've also got C's Greatsword. Honestly, like you don't need this ability at all. It's actually just doesn't work right. So we're gonna take that off. Doesn't really matter. And again, no special things here. I just have left shift Q and on cycle. And that's my 2 basically rank 50s that I've got right now. So the next set of damage spells I want to talk about are rank 90s. So we're going to go to the spreadsheet and we're going to check these out here. We've got all the elemental spells, for the most part, have a rank 90, and as well as Arcane and Necro have one. Now, technically, some of these are rank 100, but this is just kind of to keep them in a category. And they are a bit different. Inferno's got a nice knock-up, Exploding Charge, I think has a little bit of a knock-up, but some of these other ones have a bit more of an AoE, or they feel a little bit different to use. And you just kind of want to pick the one that you like, and you might want to just get a feel for a few of these and decide. But you're probably going to want to have 2. And it's probably going to be a similar situation to Fireball. You're probably going to want to have Inferno and another. But on this one, it's not as important as the Fireball one. You can just pick 2, and that'll be fine. And then to pop over to the game, I'll show you which 2 I've got. I'm trying out Blizzard. Exploding Charge, also really good. Virtuous Wrath, really good. They're all really good. I'm using Blizzard right now, and I've got it just on 2. So on my main hotbar slot, it's just on 2. And then my Inferno is actually left shift E, actually. Left shift E. And I've also got my power attacks on here. Nothing special, just cycle. Doesn't really matter there. And just left shift E on Inferno. So those are my 2 rank 90s that I've got. Choose whichever ones you want, whichever bindings you want. Those are my bindings right now. So now I want to talk about AOEs. We're going to go to the spreadsheet again for this last column. And we've got all of the AOEs here. Now, you can pick any 2 of these. Now, you're probably only going to really use one, but there might be situations where maybe you want to use one in one situation, one in the other. So I'd say just pick 2, pick 1 to 2, and just go for that, level those up. Now, I do like Toxic Rain. That's obviously a classic, a favorite by many people. And it's also Toxic Rain Studios, you know, is making Roa now. So obviously we're a little bit biased. We'll go with Toxic Rain. And and then also I like Thunderstorm, and Volcano is a classic. It used to shake the crap out of your screen. That's fun. Flames of Vengeance is pretty cool. It's kind of blinding almost a little bit when you're like inside of it. But it's kind of a unique one as well. And then you've got sort of the lesser ranked AOEs here, Acid Rain and Wall of Fire, but you can use those as well. It doesn't really matter too much. I'd say probably Toxic, Thunderstorm, and Volcano are pretty popular. So pick 1 to 2 of those and go with that. We're gonna jump back in, and currently I've got my AOEs here. They're all on 3 right now, just because I, felt like kind of trying them out and stuff, and seeing the smaller versions of them. And that's where I've got my binding. Nothing special here. They're just on the hotbar on 3. Now, that's going to be it for the main damage spells that you're going to want to have binded and utilize. So pick whatever bindings for those damage spells, and whatever is comfortable for you, and whatever's easy for you to press. You're going to want to have those damage spells on there. And same with the heals and conversions. Whatever's easiest to press around your WASD or on your mouse keys. And in general, all the bindings we've talked about so far, you're going to press these buttons a lot. So make sure they're in really easy to use and convenient binding locations for you, and that you're comfortable with pressing frequently. All right, now I want to go over blinds. So there's 3 blinds in the game, and we're going to go back to the chart, the spreadsheet here, and there's a section here called utility spells. Now, blinds are going to be this first column here. You've got 3 of them, right? So you got Pungent Mist, which is a ray, and you have to charge it up, right? You have to cast it. A cast bar goes off, and then you release it, and it basically shoots like a cloud at them, and the cloud forms, and it's just a big ball of green, and it obscures vision. It just goes wherever you are aimed, so it's like a ray. And then you've also got Confusion, which you throw it normally at the ground and look away. And it's basically going to be in an AoE around you, or in an AoE around where it lands. It's going to basically flashbang anybody that's looking that direction. So you want to look up away from it. You want to look to the side. You just want to look drastically away from the Confusion. And you want to throw it down because it's a slow travel. So normally you throw it at the ground because that's going to be the quickest way for it to hit the ground and actually trigger the spell. So that's Confusion, and then you've got Eye Rot, which is a blind that's like a projectile that you cast, and then you aim the projectile. You can also kind of like hit the ground, and that will blind them as well. And I believe you can look straight down against Eye Rot. You have to be completely looking straight down, I believe. And that will essentially dodge the Eye Rot, and it won't blind you at that point. But it depends on if they direct hit you or if they hit the ground as well. So there's some nuance there. You might want to test that one out with a friend if you want to really get down dodging the Eye Rot blind. Also, I wanted to go quickly over the blind keybinds key bindings that I have. So currently I've got Pungent Mist on shift right click. So that's where my rays are, is right click. Shift right click for Pungent Mist. Nothing special here. Just cycle Pungent Mist. And then I've got Eye Rot is on shift R. It's also where I've got my knockbacks on my greatsword. And that way I save a little bit on my bindings, but it's just left shift R on cycle. And then I also have Confusion on C. You might want something a little bit less, a little bit less important of a binding than C. It's just what I'm used to. So you could put something else on C that's a little bit more important binding wise. But that's Confusion. That's it for the blinds. You can also assign different sort of skills to these spells. So for instance, a lot of them you can assign jump to. So you can cast, let's say, Eye Rot and then be able to jump and turn to Eye Rot somebody. Or you might increase the projectile speed by, let's say, 40% or something like that. There's different upgrades you can get for all these spells. So you want to go through and see which ones you want to apply to which ones. So, for instance, Fireball is really good to have jump on. Bolts are really good to have speed on. Things like that. So you're going to want to work through those upgrades and see what feels good for which spells. I'm not going to go over all the spells, which upgrades you should get, but just keep it in mind. There's a few that you want to know about, like Jump Fireball, for instance, and Speed on Bolts, for instance.
All right, I'm going to show you where to get spell upgrades. So if you're at Sanguine or any capital city, here in Sanguine, you can see where the bank is. You want to go to the right over here. You're going to have look for the Mage trainer. And it's got this little flag outside, so you're going to walk in. You're going to talk to John the Mage. And then over here at the top, you got spell upgrades. All right. So you're going to want to go through and click these, all your bolts. Make sure you have it on travel faster. And then you'll see the icon here that lets you know this is what you've chosen. You can also switch them. 250 gold per. And then you got your rank 90s, faster. Most everything you want to pick faster on. If you want to do debuffs, you don't have to do all the spells. Just any of the spells you're going to use, which we've gone over in the video. Go ahead and get 40% faster. And then also Fireball and maybe Eye Rot or a few other spells you could do jump cast, right? So we'll go down to Fireball. We've got it on jump cast, right? So when you're casting it, you're going to be able to jump while casting it and while holding it, okay? So that'll help you, run, jump, turn around, Fireball, and you've already been casting it, and that way you can, maybe break sticky backs or just people that are, trying to kill you, right? So you're gonna want to go through and just do this for all the spells. Might cost you a little bit of gold up front, but then you never have to worry about it again. So just go through and go down and get travel faster, and then you'll be able to see here that you've got it, and just go through all of them. Right now, you don't need the spells you don't use. I'm not using Disintegrate. You don't have to get the upgrade. If you start using it, you probably should get an upgrade. Go ahead and get these upgrades as soon as you can. There's no downside to them. Just get them. And then quickly, I want to talk about these just very, very quickly. This is what people call Destroyer. You can have one of these. So people like to go Destroyer. Maybe you go Indestructible for a Siege. Also, there's Sidestep. So you can get this. There's no limitation, right? So you can just get this. You double click A, S, D, or W, and you'll basically do like a little sidestep. You got to double tap W, A, S, D, or D, right? Whichever. You double tap a direction. A, D, S, W, all that. Now, you also want to come here and get Master Scout and the Archery upgrade. There's no limitation, so there's no reason not to get it, so just get it. And then you've also got Mage Hunter, and this is going to be similar to Indestructible, right? You're going to get some protections. You can read these. Basically, normally what people pair is Destroyer and Mage Killer. That's going to do 20% damage to people wielding staffs with Archery, And then you've got Destroyer, which is 40% melee damage to people wielding staffs. And it blocks Elemental and reduces your max mana. Okay, so then, you know, you've got these other ones. Indestructible you might want to think about, and Sieges, or, you know, just in general, maybe you would want to run that. Some people have before, but it's not too amazing. You could also run Indestructible and like maybe Mage Hunter, but it's just up to you what you want to run. You can only use one of these at a time, other than this one you can just have, and then this one you can just have, right? So, but other than that, you can use only one of these in the melee, and then only one of these in the archery at a time, other than the ones we just talked about. I believe you can have these on at all times. Now, that's it for the spell upgrades. So now I want to talk about potions and food. So you're going to want to have your potions and food binded. So what you're going to want to do is open up your hotbar. You're going to want to have your potions, and basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have F1 through 4 is what I use. You're going to want to have your potions binded, right? So what you're going to do first is, let's say you have your health potion. You want it on F1 like I do. Grab your major mana potion, or excuse me, your major health potion, put it on your bar, and then your moderate health potion, put it on your bar. That way it's stacked, so if you run out of that health potion, then it'll still be stacked. I don't know why I just reset. Somehow I reset it. Okay, so we're going to grab our potions like that. You're going to have them in order of which you want to use first. So we got your major, your moderate, and your minor. So you're going to want to have your potions set up like this. That way it's using your largest potion first. This is especially good for PvP. You could switch this around. I don't know why mine are disappearing, but you could switch this around. You also can mix and combine potions. So you can go from minor potions into moderate into majors with alchemy. And I think it's alchemy. So you can do that. And then F4, you might want a Panacea potion or some other type of potion here. There's potions that regen a moderate amount of all the stats, but it's just as good to use a major and then convert your stats around as needed, right? Mostly you're going to be using health or stamina potions. Mana is a little bit more, rare to use because you can kind of afford to run out of mana. The other stats, stamina and health, you can't really afford to run out of, right, in a fight. And then you've got your binding for food, right? So what you're going to want to do with food is you're going to want to have your long-lasting food. Right now I have some shortcake. That's 10 minutes. And you're going to want to put that on your bar, right? And then you're going to want to put, whatever different types of food you have, you just stack them all up like this. That way, whatever you pull out of your bank, you're going to be able to use the same binding on. And if you got some new food, drag it onto this food bar, this food stack. And then you're going to want to have your longest lasting food in the front. And what you can do is you could either have another food binding. Currently mine is F5. Or what you could do is just, let's say you want to duel, right? You don't want to use your good food, right? Because when you get knocked to the ground, I believe it still takes away your food buff. So when you're dueling, what you can do is have some just normal cooked fish. That's only like 2 minutes. You're going to have a bunch of that from fishing. You're going to pull that to the front. And then you can do that whenever you're dueling. Just remember to pull your good food to the front whenever you're going to go out for PvP or PvE. You always want to have a food buff on you, right? You always want to have a food buff going. You just want to get used to that habit. You can kind of wait if you're not doing any fighting or anything like that. You don't have to have a food buff all the time, but anytime you're going to PvE, PvP, have a food buff running. All right, it's super important. It's going to regen your stamina, your mana, and your health. So it's going to regen your stats slowly over time, but it's very significant. You're going to see the health gains and the stat gains here as you hover over your food, right? So, and you're going to see the duration as well. So that's it for the potions and food. You're going to want to have these binded, and especially food and potions. You definitely want to have these binded. They're
very good and essential. So definitely bind these. I have F1 through 5, F5 being food, and then F1 is my health, F2 is stamina, F3 is mana, and then F4, if I had any, I would have them on here, but other potions. There's a bunch of other potions, you know, some that remove debuffs, some that heal all of your stats at a moderate amount. It's just as good to use a major, though, of a single stat potion. So keep that in mind. That's it for the potions and food. So now we want to move on to leeches. Now, what are leeches, right? So we're going to go back to our chart. We're going to take a look at leeches. Okay, so leeches are basically, they take from the target and they give to you. Now they give stats, right? So Vampiric Leech is going to take health from your target and it's going to give it to you. So you're going to aim and it's going to be like a ray. So you're going to cast and then release, and wherever you release, it's going to instantly go there and it's going to leech that health from them, right? That's Vampiric Touch. Same with Stamina Leech. It's just going to leech stamina from them and it's going to give it to you. And Mana Leech is going to leech mana, and it's going to give it to you. Now, Mana Drain isn't going to give you mana, but it will drain their mana, right? So that's why it's here. It's just, most people don't use this. It's not amazing because you're not getting the mana back. So you would just kind of rather be doing a damage spell. But it is here, just so you know about it. But these three you want to have binded 100%. So those are the leeches. And let's take a look where I've got them binded. So I've got them binded on tab. Now they're just on cycle, and I've got Vampiric Touch first because this is really the most important one. Now, one thing to know about leeches is they actually can go through block, right? Now, I'm unsure on Vampiric Touch. I believe if they're blocking already, then it might block the health drain. It might block it. It might still do the animation, right? But you might not actually be getting that health drain factor. Now, stamina and mana, I'm pretty sure do go through the block. So keep that in mind. The leeches, you definitely want to have on a binding. I've got them on tab, on cycle. You can pick whatever key you want. All right, so now I want to go over utility spells. What are utility spells? Well, they can be a little bit varying in their effect. So we're going to go back to the Google Sheet, and we're going to click on the utility spells, right? We might already be here from the blinds and the leeches. We're going to go to utility, and first off, we got Come Hither. Now, you definitely want to have this binded. All of these spells you want to have binded, and Come Hither is going to pull your target to you. So it's a ray. It goes where your crosshair is. It's going to pull the target to you, and it's really good for if you're pulling an enemy into you and he's getting away, or if he's on a mountain, you'll yoink them off the mountain and it'll take fall damage. You also might have your friend that's in trouble in a wall of force, and or some other reason you might want to pull your friend to you and get him out of harm's way, and that's Come Hither. You want to have that on a pretty useful binding. And then we got Reflect Spell. Pretty self-explanatory, long cast. You can a lot of times cast this kind of before the fight really starts. It'll stay up and it'll reflect a spell. It will reflect like blinds, like Eye Rot, for instance. Any spell that hits you, it will basically reflect that effect or damage. So that's Reflect Spell. Very, very good. Useful. You want to put that on a good binding. And you've got Ice Storm, which is essentially like Smoke Screen. Okay, so take a smoke grenade or something like that from whatever FPS you want to choose, Counter-Strike, something like that. It's going to create a big ice storm. It's going to be got a lot more movement to it, and it'll obscure. You might want to combo this with Confusion, or maybe to get a res or a gank off. You could throw it down to, make it harder to know which direction you ran out of the ice storm. And there also is another ability pretty much similar to it, just in a different spell school, a different color to the storm. It's basically going to be called Death Fog, and it's going to basically do the same thing, right? So pick one or the other. You don't have to have both, but just pick one or the other. And these do share a cooldown with your AOEs, so keep that in mind. Your Thunderstorm, your Toxic Rain. I believe it overlaps with those, so keep that in mind. That's Ice Storm. Now, we've also got Wall of Force. Now, you're probably going to want to have this on its own binding, or at least, have it on a pretty decent binding. So, Wall of Force is basically going to create a bubble, and it's an anti-gravity bubble. It will kind of suck the person in once they're close enough, and they'll continue with their momentum and kind of travel through. But if they go into the Wall of Force very slow, then they'll linger in the center and basically be like a sitting duck. So it's a way for you to impede their movement and control their movement, and you can easily hit more spells because they can't really move or dodge. There's counterplay to this with movement spells like StormBlast or Impulse or other ways that you can kind of counteract this spell, but just know that it's a very useful spell and you'll hear about it and see it a lot. And that's Wall of Force. One other thing to mention is Come Hither. You can actually pull, since they're not touching the ground, it makes it easy to pull somebody either to you or maybe your friends. You can pull them out of the Wall of Force with Come Hither. Or you could even StormBlast somebody out of the Wall of Force. So there's ways to kind of counter and work around Wall of Force. But otherwise, it's a very good spell. And then we've also have Magma Storm. Now, you're definitely going to want to have this on a binding. An easy to press binding. Magma Storm essentially is a magma ball, and it is affected by gravity. So you're going to have to aim it up a bit and arch it. And it's going to knock the player up, like straight up from wherever you hit them. And that's going to make it easy to combo, let's say, a ray, a fireball, things like that, a bolt. You're going to be able to hit them as they fall to the ground. And then when they hit the ground, you can also use that opportunity to try to land spells. And basically, Magma Storm is just a really nice CC. So it's going to knock them up quite a bit, maybe 10, 15 feet, straight up into the air and then straight back down. And then you also have Lend Mana. A little bit underused spell, but if you're doing group fights and stuff like that, it's basically going to take some mana from you to cast the spell, right? And then it's going to give them a more positive amount of mana, right? So if you're lending mana, then you're kind of distributing your stats, at least your mana stat, amongst players, essentially. Now, it works like a ray. So you look at somebody, you cast it, it lends them the mana, and there you go. And then we already talked about Death Fog, the same as Ice Storm, right? So those are your utility spells. Now I'm going to quickly go over where I've got them binded, and let's see here. So I've got Come Hither on Shift V. Nothing special. Put it on whatever binding you want. Just make sure you have it on a binding. You want to have that. And then we've got Reflect Spell. I just have it on Tilde. This is Tilde. And then we've got Ice Storm. I've got it on Z. You can have it on whatever. Or you could have Death Fog, right? Pick one or the other. Doesn't really matter. And then I've got Wall of Force on V. And I've got Magma Storm on 1, right? Magma is super important, and I'll just quickly show you Magma Storm. I'm not going to show you all the abilities or anything like that, but there you go. Affected by gravity, and it'll knock up somebody straight into the air. Then I've got Lend Mana on Shift Caps Lock, right? So that's Lend Mana. I'm not sure if I went over the heal bindings, but the heal other bindings I've got Sacrifice and Heal Other on Caps Lock there. So the next spells I want to go over are movement spells. Now, let's go over to the sheet again, and we're going to look at movement spells. So we've got Explosion. It's going to be comboed with Begone or StormBlast, and it's going to allow you to go further up into the air. And we'll quickly show you what that looks like, because a lot of these movement spells are a little bit hard to wrap your brain around. So, for instance, I might StormBlast, and we'll talk about StormBlast in a second. I might StormBlast down, and then I might Explosion, and it's gonna lift me up a little bit, right? It's gonna continue my momentum in the direction, right? So, Explosion's really nice for what we call water hopping. There's bunny hopping and water hopping. And basically, you're going to be gone on the ground, or on the top of the water, excuse me, and then you're going to cast Explosion after you get launched into the air. Now, I'll go over water hopping in a minute, and I'll show you kind of a way to line that up a little bit. Now, the other spell we want to talk about here for movement is Impulse. Okay? So it's a greater magic spell. You're going to want to aim it basically at the straight down at the ground. And let's check it out. We'll go over these movement spells and kind of see how to use them. So I'm casting Impulse, right? And I aim down, and then I bunny hop after as I'm hitting the ground. That's going to be a nice bunny hopping spell, right? Pretty decently short cooldown. Look, it's already almost up, about halfway. And you can aim it straight down, but I'd suggest a little bit less than straight down. And because as you're running, you're going to kind of walk over it as you go. So that's Impulse. And then you also have Begone. So we've probably all heard about Begone. It's a little basically dust cloud or a little air cloud or something. And you're going to want to throw it on the ground in front of you as you're running. And then it's going to boost you forward and it's going to give you some upwards and a lot of sideways momentum, right? And so you're going to want to hit the bunny hops after that. Now, you could use it like it was intentionally designed and hit somebody and it'll knock them away a little bit, but that you don't want to do that because that would be a waste, right? You want to save your Begone, and it's used for bunny hopping. It's your main bunny hopping spell, and also it's your main water hopping spell. So we'll go over water hopping in just a minute. Let's go over the rest. Now you also have StormBlast, which is another main movement spell. So a couple different ways to use it. You can go straight down, and it will blast you straight up like we saw before with the explosion. Or what you can do is you can use it to bunny hop, right? So there's going to be a little bit of a feel to this, but basically you want to be running and you want to aim kind of like down but still a little bit forward. And that's going to boost you up and forward. Now it'll do it at different angles, right? And also StormBlast can be used to get out of Wall of Forces, like I talked about earlier. And StormBlast can be used in a lot of different ways. So you might want to StormBlast somebody off of one of your friend's bodies that's being ganked, or maybe an enemy is rezzing their teammate, and you could StormBlast them away from the res so that they don't get the res off. And there's a lot of different ways to use StormBlast. So it's a very versatile spell and a very good movement spell too. We also have a couple other movement spells. They're pretty much mainly vertical, right? And so we've got Launch. And Launch, you want to like butt up against a wall, to put your person up against a wall, and you want to aim at the wall. And it's going to basically, you're going to let it go, and it's going to do a little boost straight up, right? So that's Launch. So it's really good for getting over vertical walls or mountains or something like that. And you want to combo it with other spells like this spell, Telekinesis. So what you could do is Telekinesis will create basically like a funnel of air that goes upwards, right? So it's like it's like a big funnel of air. Now you're gonna want to aim it. You could just aim it like right here, let's say, and then it'll take you up to there. But what you can do is you can also like, I don't know, maybe put it here, and then you could also cast. You can also cast Launch, and then you can go through the funnel of air, and that's going to boost you up higher, right? So those can be comboed together. Now we're going to quickly jump over here into the water, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a tip on water hopping. Now, water hopping might look hard or intimidating, and it can be a little bit tricky. Basically, what you want to do is you've got the horizon here. It's like a perfect line, right? once you're in the water. Now, you're going to want to pick some kind of UI element that you've got, right? That you're not going to move around too much, right? And you're going to want to line that up with the horizon, okay? Now, this isn't going to work very well when you get to the shore or closer to the shore because the horizons, it's not going to line up right? So when you're out of water, what I've chosen is basically the bottom of this hotbar icon here, right? Just to the bottom, okay? That'll help you out, and you basically want to cast Begone. And so as you're swimming, you cast Begone on the top of the water, and then you want to jump, and then you want to cast Explosion, right? I was a little bit late there on the Explosion, but it still carried me forward, right? So as you go into the air pocket, the Begone, you want to jump right as you enter it. And that's going to allow you to go up and forward, and it'll give you some verticality there, right? And that gives you time to cast Explosion. You might cast a Conversion because you can't cast underwater, so you definitely want to learn how to water hop. But again, just move some UI element, maybe your item bar, maybe your compass, maybe your chat, whatever. Just have something here you can quickly line up with, right? And I chose the bottom of this hotbar. You could choose whatever UI element you want to put to make it easier for you. So that's water hopping. So I'm going to quickly go over my bindings for my movement spells. So Explosion, at the moment, I just have it tied to my Begone, right? So right now, I've got Begone on left shift F. And then I've got it on cycle. So for water hopping, this makes it a little bit easier. But you might want to combo with StormBlast. So that could be something else you want to think about. You want to maybe have it on your own button or have it also on StormBlast as well in a cycle, which I might do that as well. So Begone is on left shift F as well as Explosion on cycle. And then I have Impulse on X. And then I've got StormBlast on left shift C. And then I've got Telekinesis and Launch just here on my main hotbar slot on 7 and 8. You could have your own binding or key for these. These aren't quite as important or time sensitive casting wise. So you can put these on like a less priority button for sure. So figure out something for all those movement buttons. You want to be sure you have Begone, StormBlast, and Impulse and Explosion on some kind of button that you're going to be able to press. It's not going to be too difficult. It doesn't have to be the most important button, but just be sure you've got those bounded. All right, so now I want to talk about buffs and CrossBuffs. Now there's a ton of buffs and CrossBuffs. So under the utility spell sheet here, we've got buffs and CrossBuffs. I just put probably the most important ones. Okay, so you could have Fire Shield or some kind of Elemental Shield as well on here that if you know the player's using a lot of fire or lightning, or they, maybe you know their what spells they like to use category-wise, you could mix that in. You could also just, if you have time, you could buff up all the buffs, right? There's no downside really to it, but you don't really always get that opportunity, nor should you worry too much about doing that. But some of the buffs you really want to focus on is going to be Hasten Spells. That's a really important one. It's going to make your spell casting speed a little bit faster, right? The charging time. And then Stone Skin's really nice too as well. So it gives you protection against weapon attacks. And Arrow Shield gives you protection against arrows. So those are probably your three main buffs. And there's one more. I didn't really know where to put it, so we put it into buffs. It's Unburden. Now, it's a short buff, right? But what it does is it reduces your encumbrance. Now, that's going to allow your heals and some of the important spells to basically do more, right? They're going to heal more. They're going to convert more. So because your encumbrance is lower, you're going to have those be more powerful, right? Be more effective. So this is especially important for destroyers or heavily encumbrance-wise armored players, right? If you have a very heavy set with a lot of resistances, that gives you a lot of encumbrance, you want to use Unburden potentially before you heal, so you get more out of those heal cooldowns, right? And it lasts, I believe, 10 seconds. So you only have a certain amount of spells to use, and really, because you're choosing to cast it, that means you're not casting other things, right? So, or doing other things. So you want to be sure you're in a relatively okay spot to use it mid-fight, and then use the spells you want to use afterwards, right? So that's Unburden. And then you have a couple of important cross buffs. Now, you've got Haste, which is probably the most important cross buff. If you're ever going to use a cross buff, use Haste, okay? Just cast Haste and then move on with whatever you're doing, okay? So Haste is really, really good, especially on destroyers. So haste your destroyers, haste your melee, heavy, type hybrids, whatever. Haste those people. Now, you also got Rapid Shot and Arrow Ward. So you've got range attack speed increase and protection against arrows, right? So really the two most important ones are Haste and Rapid Shot. You could do Arrow Ward. You could do some of the other ones. There are a ton of other buffs and cross buffs for all the elementals and other things, but really these I've kind of boiled down to the most important ones, all right? Now, the cross buffs, keep in mind you do have to aim those, right? They are like a ray. You do have to be pretty close to your friendly, target or whatever as well. You gotta be a little bit close, and keep that in mind. So those are the cross buffs and buffs that are gonna be important for you to use. Make sure you have those on a binding. What I like to do though with buffs and cross buffs is I've got this humongous buff stack, right? I just have it on 5. You could put it on like an actual binding, and I like autocast, right? And then you probably want to do cycle. You could do first available, but then you won't get through all the buffs if you do want a full buff. So I like cycle. I like autocast. You don't have to do that. I just have it on the normal hotbar binding 5. So that's buffs. Now cross buffs I have on 6. Again, you just want, you want Haste, you want Stone Skin, Rapid Shot, all that good stuff. You just kind of want to prioritize in order. You want the main 3, right? Here at the beginning of these. Now cross buffs, same kind of deal, just on cycle. No autocast on those, because you want to be able to hold and aim those. But for the buffs, you don't have to aim, so you can just put those on autocast. Now we're going to go to the final section on the spreadsheet, okay? We've also have the debuffs, okay? Now these have been nerfed, all right? They used to last a lot longer, and I've been told that they have been nerfed. So they're not quite as good as they used to be. You can still use them. I mean, it's not like they're useless. I think it's just the time in which the timer at like how long someone's debuffed for is what's changed. So you can still use these. Now, if you're going to use some debuffs, I'd recommend picking a couple and just kind of leveling those up and going with those. Now, slashing weakness is going to be good if you're using swords or axes, things like that. You could use slow. It reduces their melee attack speed. So maybe, if the person you're fighting maybe likes to push melee, maybe you hit them with a slow and a waff or something like that. And anyways, you might want to keep Pestilence in mind as well. So let's say somebody's like standing still for whatever reason, and you have a really easy, clear shot, and they don't know you're there or something like that. Pestilence is going to reduce their vitality, which is basically going to just reduce their max health for a certain amount of time. So this is kind of a surprise situation where you can hit them with this and it'll reduce their max health. And that essentially is like doing a big thing of damage, kind of. Okay? You could hit them with like Ominous Drain, kind of a similar situation for all stats. You got all the elemental debuffs. You've got Burden, it reduces their encumbrance. Might make them cast slower and increases their encumbrance, And you also have Delayed Shot for ranged weapons. There's quite a bit of debuffs. Just don't use them, use them. It doesn't really matter. Just pick a few. You could read through them, and whichever one you like. This is just preference if you do choose to use debuffs. Now, I do have some debuffs on a button here, and I just have them in a big stack, right? I just have the ones I think I might use, right? But really, this is just if I want to level them. I really haven't been leveling them, so it's not really important. I just have them on 4, but honestly, I don't know if I'll keep them there, right? They're really not important. Probably not going to press that key, so it doesn't really matter. Just if you want to put them on your bar and use them, feel free to. See how they work for you. Don't just disregard them altogether. But yeah, and then I also have my slashing and piercing debuffs on T, right? Because those I use a lot for PvE. So you might want to cast slashing or maybe piercing depending on which weapon you're using. This would be swords and axes. This would be knives. So, or maybe even bows, I believe, are piercing. So you might want to do that for PvE, killing mobs. That'll make it a little bit easier. You can have a little bit lower rank weapon, and you can still kill some pretty tough mobs that way. So those are the debuffs. And now I want to talk about melee skills. So we went over a few melee skills, but I want to talk about what they actually do. So we're going to go back to our spreadsheet, and we're going to go scroll over here. Now I didn't give them their own sheets, but there's only a few of them, right? So you got disabling blow with the sword. Now that's obviously just going to disable their ability to parry or block. And you're going to see like a purple hand whenever they're disabled. You got knockback, greatsword. That's going to knock them away if you hit them. It's going to knock them like kind of up and away. So it's good for stopping ganks or revives or whatever, right? Stuff like that. You got power attack, which does a bleed. It's like a stab, so it's a little bit harder to hit. Usually you want to like use it when they're sort of CC'd in some kind of way to kind of guarantee that you hit it. It's going to cause a bleed. And then you've got rage. Now this is a melee power technically, and this is your heal. You have to have your sword out to use this, and it's got a really long cooldown, and it also reduces elemental attacks. Right? It gives you protection, against elemental attacks. That's going to be your magic, stuff like that. And it gives a little bit of a heal. You got C's Greatsword. It's supposed to draw you closer to your opponent. Draws your opponent closer to you. It just doesn't. It just don't use it. Okay? And then Whirlwind Attack is your main jam for your AOE. You're going to want to pop that out when somebody's chasing you or when there's a couple people around you or something like that. You're just going to whirlwind and hit them all. You're going to want to have that on a pretty easy to press binding. It's just an AoE around you. You do a little spin. It's pretty dope. Okay? Now, we're going to go back into the game here. I think I ran through where these are all binded. But basically, you got your whirlwind, right? I have it on mouse button right click autocast. You've got your power attack, which is shift E for me. You've got your disabling blow, which is Q for me. And then shift R is going to be my knockback and rage. So it's going to be, for me, it's going to be tilde. And there we go, right? And if you do have a bunch of different melee weapons, right, that you use, you're going to want to put those disabling blows and power attacks. You're going to want to stack those all on your bindings, right? So I've got greatsword and knives here, disabling blows. So you're going to want to stack all your disabling blows on that same button. And I also have disabling shot on there as well. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but there is a disabling bolt, right? I have it on shift tab. But you might want to have that on a different binding, or you could have it on the same binding as all your disables. Whatever you want to do, however it's convenient for you. It is a staff, disabling bolt. So you might already have spells on, Q, for instance, is what I have. So I don't want to put it on Q because that's my normal bolts, right? So, you can mess around and figure that out. Those are the disables and the melee skills. So the last thing I want to talk about is common skills. All right. What are your common skills, and do you need them? What's going on with those, okay? So back to the spreadsheet really quick here. The last time we've got your common skills. So you definitely want to have gank and revive on your bar, okay? Now gank, obviously, when players get knocked to the ground, you can finish them off with gank, right? You got to have a melee weapon out. You can have any melee weapon out, and it's a little bit of cast. It'll kill them. There you go. Now revive, it's going to be the opposite. So if somebody's downed, you want to revive them. You press the revive key, a little cast bar. There's a trick to be able to move while reviving. I think it's like right as you start the cast, if you move like within a split moment of starting the cast, something like that. You have to test it out and figure out exactly how it works there on your own. But revive, you want to have that on a button. You've got rest, which is already on K. And you got summon mounts, which you can just put anywhere. And then you've got your Bindstone recall, which is going to be below your minimap. Your capital recall, going to be below your minimap. And your house recall. Capital recall is on a 2-hour cooldown unless you are, I think, 1,000 alignment. It reduces it. So keep that in mind. Bindstone recall, I think it's like a minute or two cooldown. Not too sure on the cooldown on that. Now, you go back to the game. Currently, I've got my gank on left shift X. Again, you can put on whatever. I think by default it's X and revive is Z by default. I just went the shift versions of those to make it easy because I want to use X and Z for other stuff. So left shift X is gank. You got to have your melee weapon out. And revive, you can revive with anything out. It'll put away your weapon, I believe. And then you'll start reviving. So I have it on left shift Z, okay? And then K, obviously, to rest. And then I got my mount button on 0 on my hotbar, okay? Now, I think it's by default F5. And it actually has a figurine. So you actually want to go in and get the mount summon skill if you haven't already. Or summon mount. And you want to put that on your bar. And then you can throw your figurine, if it's on here, off the bar. Because your figurine is here, and that will be where your mount is, and your summon mount will pull from your paper doll figurine, right? So that's how the summon mount works. You want to have that as a button because sometimes when you're escaping or trying to close the gap on people, you might want to summon your mount and hop on your mount. So it doesn't have to be an important button, but have that on some kind of button. And then you got your recall, your capital, and then your house recall should show up here if you have a house. Okay, so that's all the common skills for you, and that's going to be it for the spell binding breakdown, the spell breakdown, and also I built this resource for you, the Google Sheet. Now, we've already pretty well gone over everything with the Google Sheet, but it's going to be in the description below. And I will post it in the Discord, and hopefully, with any luck, we can put it on the wiki too, okay? So that might take a little bit of time. I don't know if it'll happen, but hopefully we can get it on there as well. Now, this is going to be your index. It's going to cover all your spells. You got your important spells, which you want to have all these on a binding. We went over all the bindings. You're going to want to have some form or fashion of the damage spells and some numbers on your bar. Let's say 1 bolt, let's say all these rays, and then maybe 2 R50s, maybe 2 R90s, maybe 2 AOEs. And then after that, all of these utility spells, we can go to utility spells, you're going to want to have on a binding. You need to bind all of these, okay? So again, by importance, just choose the ones you're going to use the most and put those on the most convenient bindings, right? So you got all of these utility spells here for you on this page. And then you got your damage spells. And this is just for reference, right? Because if you go to damage spell picker, you can choose whichever ones you want, right? And then you can just click these. You'll be able to click all these, right? And you'll be able to use, you know, you can organize an order, and you can basically decide, like, you know, I want to use this spell or that spell, and so on and so forth. Okay, so all of these are going to have the reagent cost as well as a description and a mana and stamina cost. Okay, so keep that in mind too. So you could kind of get a feel for how much of which reg you're going to use. And if you click these buttons down here, it's going to uncheck and check the whole column. Okay, so I got a button for each of these, and that's how you'll kind of reset this page. All right. So that's it for the damage spell picker, and then you got your debuffs as well. So we've already gone through all these, but I just wanted to remind you this is how the spreadsheet works, and hopefully we'll get this in your hands very, very soon. This is going to be available with the video as it goes live. I'll have the link down there, and you'll be able to come over here and check it all out and use this as much as you want. So that's going to be it for the video. Please go down below and like it and subscribe if you enjoyed the video or if you found it useful. And I appreciate y'all. And thank you so much. We'll see you next time.